On April 11th, 1983, Dave Mustaine was fired from Metallica just prior to the band recording their debut album Kill 'Em All due to substance abuse and personal conflicts with James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich. As Metallica's lead guitarist since 1981, Mustaine had composed some of the group's early songs and helped hone the band into a tight live unit. Afterward, Mustaine vowed revenge by forming a band that was faster and heavier than Metallica. On the bus trip back to Los Angeles, Mustaine found a pamphlet by California Senator Alan Cranston that read, "The arsenal of Megadeth can't be rid no matter what the peace treaties come to." The term Megadeth stuck with Mustaine, and he wrote a song with the spelling slightly changed to Megadeth, Megadeth, which, according to Mustaine, represented the annihilation of power.
You take a mortal man and call him on the phone. Okay, guys. Hello. Mike Marlinsky here from the Metal Web Scene. This is going to be episode 14 of All the Metal Podcast. We have a very special Megadeth edition for tonight, obviously. Our guest is going to be Greg DiPasquale. He's currently playing guitar in Fatal Curse from Moravia, New York. I think that's how you pronounce that. With Chris Bowen and the gang. Greg used to be in Buffalo death metal titan Seplophile. He's been in Herod. He was in From This Day. He was in Sons of Azrael. A bunch of bands that most Buffalo metalheads of a certain age should know by now. So he's also one of the biggest Megadeth fans that I know, and that is what earned him the moniker Gregadeth. So I've prepared a Megadeth questionnaire for Mr. Gregadeth, and we're going to get into that and have one fuck of an episode. Don't touch that dial. Hello, good sir. How are you?
I'm well. How about yourself? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. You're picking up just fine. I am doing well. So, you have been trying to do this for a couple weeks, and you have been basically calling for a Megadeth edition.
Yeah.
Correct?
For sure.
All right. What was the other thing you wanted to talk about? Like, there was, not the show from May 7th, but, like, shortly after that, you said there was some metal-related holiday that had recently passed. Maybe it was something with Motorhead?
Oh, it was just, I guess, the 8th of May is now Motorhead Day, because I guess it's supposed to sound like the Ace of Spades.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah, so that happened. You know, Motorhead's pretty great.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never heard of that, but I will make a mental note of that.
I don't think this has existed before this year.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
I think it was fairly, at least as far as I was concerned, I mean, I wasn't aware of it until this year, so.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Alrighty. Alright, well, I have prepared a Megadeth questionnaire for you, because you're probably the biggest Megadeth fan that I know. So, I am going to... I guess I'll just... Did you have anything before we jump into this, by the way?
No, I kind of, the less I know, the better.
Okay, alright, cool. Okay, so, what is your favorite track on Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good?
That's a bit of a tough one because it's actually not one of my favorite records from them. But I would have to say probably Sculpt Beneath the Skin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to go with Mechanics on that one.
Honestly, I think the Four Horsemen is better. I know that's probably heretical to most Megadeth fans, but I prefer Metallica's version of the Four Horsemen to Megadeth's version of the Mechanics, or even, the No Life Till Leather version of the Mechanics, which is basically, the Megadeth version, they just threw an extra riff in front of it, but it's basically played the same way as it was on the Metallica demo, but I prefer the way it ended up on Kill 'Em All as the Four Horsemen.
Yeah. I was gonna, this is something I'm gonna ask you about way later, but, there's a subconscious appeal to Megadeth because they're a revenge band, and I think that's why I like Mechanics so much, because it's kind of a revenge track, but,
It's funny that you would mention that, because I think one of the appeals, besides the music, because, that's first and foremost always. That's always most important, how good the music is.
Right.
But, when you're young and you're into music and you're maybe into it a little bit more than, something that would be considered a casual listener, you find things about bands that you like or that you can identify with. And I'll never forget, when I don't remember how old I was, but I got kicked out of a band when I was in 7th grade. And it's silly now, but it really fucking hurt. I was really, really mad about it. It wasn't upset or crying, but I remember I was pissed. I was just so oh, what the fuck? And I just remember being really pissed off and upset about it, and that kind of, in a way, drew me more towards Megadeth, because here was a guy who basically had centered his entire career, around revenge, or vengeance, or trying to, get his pride back or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Obviously, the story between him and Metallica has been, documented ad nauseum. So I don't want to, dwell too much on that aspect of the band. But, it was something that in addition to liking the music, Megadeth being a revenge band was definitely something that made them even more appealing to me.
Yeah, because you had a Dave Mustaine moment in 7th grade.
Well, I wouldn't say it was a Dave Mustaine moment. I didn't get kicked out of a band 3,000 miles from home. But,
right.
But I guess it was the 7th grade version of what happened to Dave Mustaine.
Yeah, there you go. Very well put.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question is, if you had to choose one, would it be Rust in Peace or Countdown to Extinction?
Ooh, that's tough. That really is tough, because those are, hang on. With questions like this, they're so tough, because these are records that, are so ingrained in me, and I've heard them all so many times, and they're such a part of my musical DNA. But I will say that if I had to pick between the two, because each record serves a different purpose, Yeah. Rust in Peace is just so much on the musical side of things. It's just next level everything, musicality, wise. Whereas Countdown, it's almost like it still has like a really, really high level of musicality to it. It's, I feel like that they kind of entered. See, the problem is I'm gonna fucking just analyze the shit out of these now.
Yeah, good, good.
So,
you should.
On Countdown, I really feel like, and this is kind of rare air, they entered like Rush territory in a way, to where they had this top-notch, high-caliber musicianship, but they were able to weave it into really catchy, easy to remember, like, big, powerful songs.
Right, they had the technical side and they had the hooky side too. They had it pretty well balanced.
That record, as far as metal is concerned, that might be the peak of it. I don't really know if there's ever been a band in the genre, because the Black Album, again, I said I didn't really want to get too much in the Megadeth and Metallica thing, but I almost think it's unavoidable.
It really is unavoidable.
Because at the time, this is based on, memories of, at this point, 28 years ago, but just the way I remembered it, it was always, at that time, those were the two biggest metal bands in the world. Maiden had kind of hit a down period. Dickinson quit. Priest basically went through the same exact thing. Halford left. Pantera really was kind of on their way up. And Slayer was never really commercially big. And Anthrax was kind of about to hit their rough period. So as far as that's concerned, that's 1 and 2. And at that time, it was those two records, the Black Album and Countdown.
Yep.
And the way the Black Album is just really, really well-written, concise, powerful songs, but there really isn't a lot of technical prowess.
No.
That's just not the way it was. And that's why I always think the edge of those two records is Countdown, And I know I'm deviating from, way off the path of the initial question, but I'm just kind of I'm basically trying to talk it through myself so I can give you an answer. And I think that if I have to choose, I'm going to go with Rust in Peace.
Mm-hmm.
Just because there is a couple songs on Countdown that you could argue that maybe it's a song or two too long. There's not a song on Countdown I don't like, but you could argue that, maybe
could they have served on a different record?
Yeah, or not even served on a different record, because as the Hidden Treasures compilation would, kind of show is the best example. Is they were just on soundtrack after soundtrack after soundtrack back then. They could have just saved it for a B-side, for a single, or just saved it for a soundtrack. Like a song like High Speed Dirt, is great, but I don't know that it necessarily needed to be on that record.
Right.
It's not, to me, it's not a mandatory track. And on Rust in Peace, I feel like every song is important. There's really no, I very seldom I would say when I listen to Rust in Peace, I very seldom just listen to a song.
Right.
I feel like I almost always listen to it as one piece. I started Holy Wars and I shut it off after it, ends.
Yeah.
At Rust in Peace, Polaris.
Yep. Yep.
So if I have to go with one of the two, I'm going with Rust in Peace.
Yeah. I think. It's weird. It's for me, Countdown is more of a nostalgia piece, but Rust in Peace is just a more impressive album. And I think that Holy Wars is like, I don't know, when I think of Megadeth, I think of Holy Wars. I think of that song, I think of that opening, you know, and I think of those riffs. So
you could say it's like they're you know, when you think of a band and their trademarks and calling card songs, you know, it's, especially in metal, often there's a signature riff involved, and, you know, that's a pretty classic riff. I mean, even if you don't really like Megadeth, if you are a fan of metal, you probably can recognize the riff to Holy Wars.
Yeah.
You know, it's just one of those songs. It's a part of the, you know, it's part of the furniture, basically. You know? I mean, it's, you know, it could be their penultimate song. You know, who knows? I mean, I'm sure everyone has a different take on that, but that's one of their, you know, that's probably one of their encore songs. You know, you kind of gauge a band's classic work when you see them live, and just based on what they play last or come out for an encore.
Yeah, that's the one that people are begging for if they don't play it.
Yeah. I've seen Megadeth live, I think maybe 4 or 5 times, and, you know, actually, you know what, that's wrong. I did see them open with Holy Wars one time. Which was weird. But, yeah, I think every other time Holy Wars kind of came at the ass end of the set.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Actually, if since, you know, conversation is the, you know, the crux of this, I will say that when I saw them open with Holy Wars, it was really, really cool the way they did it, because you know how in between bands, you know, when they're getting the next band set up, they play the songs over the house PA or whatever, you know, like the songs that are just playing for people to listen to in between sets. I'll never forget, the Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin was playing.
Yeah.
And there was absolutely no indication that
Megadeth was going to come out.
That Megadeth was anywhere near ready to go on. And then, because it was just like, there was no text out there. You didn't hear any, like, I don't remember hearing any, you know, like, you know how it is when you play guitar, you kind of just, you turn up the volume knob, you scrape the string just to make sure you got a signal, you know. And
Yep.
I don't remember hearing any of that. And as soon as the Immigrant Song ended, like, within the span, I mean, it's great production. Within a span of like 2 seconds, all the lights went down. And as soon as the song ended, I'll never forget, it was dun 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 dun. And then all of a sudden, as soon as it hit the last note of the Immigrant Song hit, a second later, just Mustaine came out on stage and played the riff to Holy Wars.
Oh my God.
Went right into it. Like, everyone was totally
taken by surprise, right? Wow. I've never seen a band do that. I mean, I've been to so many shows, I've never seen a band come out like that.
It's something that stuck with me, because I was still relatively young, I think, when I saw that show. I think I was like, might have been 17 or 18. So, you could argue that, oh, well, you really hadn't seen a lot of concerts yet. But I've seen a lot of concerts since then, and I've never seen that since. So, to me, that I always thought that was really, really unique, both how they started the show and the song that they started the show with. So I thought that was hot shit for sure.
Yeah. Usually it's like, you know, you go to a show now, a bigger show. Back when we were allowed to go to shows, and like, you know, the lights would dim. You know, like a song will be playing, and then you'll hear the song like fade out if it's not already at the end of that song, and then the lights will dim. And then, you know, you'll hear some kind of a backing track, because, like, everybody has to start with a backing track now. So then you're still waiting an additional, like, minute or two for the band to even start walking out on stage. But what you're describing is, I've never seen that before in my life. That sounds amazing.
No, it was, I mean, it all, from the end of the Immigrant Song to the start of the Holy Wars, there was, like, a half a second. And they got the lights down, and a spotlight on Mustaine, and he just kind of ran right out, just went right into Holy Wars. I mean, it was. I cannot stress how amazing.
What tour was this?
Actually, again, I haven't seen it since.
What tour was this, and where was this?
Oh my God, this tour sucked. It was it was a disaster, I guess, because it was initially supposed to be. It had a name. Oh yeah, it was the Maximum Rock Tour, which is a fucking terrible name.
Yeah.
Just awful, just total shit. But the tour was Anthrax, Megadeth, which is great, and then headlined by Motley Crue, which was like, I mean, it's kind of like it's just darker times of metal or whatever. So I doubt at any other point in history would the first two bands ever been playing with the headlining band. But this just the times that we were in. It was like 99 or 2000. And I'll never forget, like 2 weeks into the tour, I guess it was just, Motley Crue wasn't really at their peak, and it was a time when Tommy Lee wasn't even in the band. It was, I'll never forget, it was Samantha Maloney from Hole.
Oh, wow.
Their drummer. So, I mean, that's not great. She's not anywhere near as good as
Tommy Lee, right? Yeah.
And for all the press, and really he's more of a personality than he is a musician. He's kind of been that way for a while, but if you look past the whatever his persona is, he's a fucking great rock and roll drummer. I mean, those old Crue records, should attest to that. He was just a great rock drummer, and they replaced him with someone who was definitely far less of a powerhouse than he was. And it was, the record they had just put out wasn't very good. It was just a crap tour. And anyway, I kind of lost track of what I was saying here, but I think about a week or two before the show I caught, which was in Canandaigua, New York, Anthrax had to leave the tour because the tour was losing so much money because it was just like a shitty tour. And so Anthrax ended up having to leave the tour. So by the time it got to Canandaigua, it was just Megadeth and Motley Crue. And Megadeth was great. Motley Crue was just the absolute shit. Just fucking terrible. It was embarrassing. Hands down, out of all the quote big bands I've seen in my life, they are easily
the worst live band.
Worst. And for everyone who thinks that Vince Neil all of a sudden sucks, no, he was fucking that bad in 2000.
I've heard this from many people, actually.
He's been phoning it in for decades. He sucked back then. He sucks now. It was just and off. It was embarrassing because it was like, I don't know. Megadeth was out there, and they were. I'm trying to stay away from a take no prisoners joke, but I guess I'm already on that path.
Sure.
They were on stage. They took no prisoners.
Right.
They took no prisoners, and they just were, and they slaughtered Motley Crue. I mean, it was embarrassing. It was pathetic. It was pathetic how bad Motley Crue was. It was embarrassing that Megadeth had to open for that.
Yeah.
But in the same respect, I was also glad that Megadeth got to open for them because it really, I would hope, showed people how fucking...
Oh, I love it when openers steal the show. I love it when openers steal the show. It's a cool thing to see, and they always end up with more fans, leaving with more fans than they arrived with.
You would hope so.
Yeah.
You would hope so, but I think the problem was at that tour, I mean, there was there was always that line. We're not old enough to really know, but I'm sure we've all heard it a bunch of times. Back in the day, they were on opposite sides of the fence. You had your hair metal bands, and you had like the heavier
metal
bands,
yep.
thrash bands.
Mm-hmm.
They were never going to commingle. I mean, they were never going to break bread or share bed.
Right.
wasn't going to happen like that. And the fact that it was such a bad environment for that kind of music, that they had to do that, it was there was definitely some conflicting, audience. There's conflicted audience element there, and of course there was some people who were into both. At that point, I never denied the first couple Motley records and Dr. Feelgood. I've been way into those since I was a kid. Still am, but the Motley Crue I saw that night was not that Motley Crue.
It's going to change your perspective. Whenever you see a band live and they tank, whenever you see a band that you like live and they tank like that, it at least for me, it alters my perspective of that band. And sometimes I have a hard time going back to the studio releases,
Well, here's the thing though. It's like, at that point, Motley Crue was, I think it was at that point maybe 19 years after their debut record. There's enough video evidence out there to show that at one point they were just a killer live band, just a killer band in general. But, and I'm really reticent to kind of maybe take too many shots about Vince Neil because, I think he's got a lot of fucking problems, probably.
Oh, absolutely he does.
And, he's had kind of a rough go of things, both with things that are within his control and outside of his control. So I don't really want to beat up on him too bad, but if you just want to take what he does or doesn't do at face value, he's just not a good front man. He's just not good. And when you're paying the kind of money that people are paying to see these bands, it's embarrassing.
Yep.
And I was proud to say that I went there to see the right band that night, and I saw the band that clearly won and clearly just shit all over Motley Crue. It was great.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it was your, I don't know if Megadeth is your all-time favorite band, but it's cool that you got to see Megadeth of all bands do that to Motley Crue.
Yeah, and you know what? To touch on that, yeah, I would say Megadeth is definitely. They're definitely in the top. For a period of time, they were definitely number one, but they're kind of always floating in and out of probably the top three.
Right.
They're in there with, Maiden and, I don't know, Van Halen maybe, but they're definitely floating around in the top three.
Yeah, of course.
For sure.
Did you think that Megadeth was done in 2002?
Oh, when, with the Mustaine hand injury thing?
Yeah, there was the injury, and then there was the legal battle.
Well, there was, I think there was, the injury happened when he was in rehab, because he had relapsed again. The way, did I think they were done? At that point, I was still young enough to kind of take that stuff at face value and believe that stuff, and the way they, explained his injury, it seemed like it was something that was insurmountable, and that he was just never ever going to be able to play guitar, at least the kind of guitar that, being a Megadeth would require him to play. And I would, because I remember at that time when he announced the breakup of the band, he also started he sold like a shitload of gear. I remember on the Megadeth website, he was selling old guitars, old, backline banners, and, just old gear.
Yeah, that's true.
To me, I took it, I did believe it because it seemed like all the things that you would think would happen when you're being told that you just lost really your livelihood was happening. He disbanded his band, which, a lot of bands can get away with replacing everyone or whatever. Megadeth is not one of those bands. You know, you could never ever do that band without him. Obviously, I don't really know anyone else who thinks otherwise, at least not seriously. But like, I did believe it. You know, the injury seemed pretty bad. He was selling gear, and obviously, you know, let's be real here. Mustaine is not known for his modesty.
Right.
You know, he could be, you know, definitely a little bit of an asshole. Probably a lot bit of an asshole. You know?
Yeah. Right.
You know, he's definitely not known for subtleties, and you know, he definitely has an ego. And for him to admit, I'm done, I'm toast. You know, to me, like, that was so out of character.
Yeah.
For him. And this is a guy who has, I mean, you know, this is a guy who is, from what I've, you know, read, he's in the Nikki Sixx camp of dudes that have, you know, legally died, you know, from ODs.
Sure.
And,
sure.
You know, he's been to rehab, you know, I think, 20 times or whatever, and he's just repeatedly fucked up his own personal life so many times, and he just never quit. You know, he always bounced back in some way. And so I believed it because it was so out of character. All of it was out of character for him. So to me, it seemed legit. And then the legal battle, I mean, that was just, you know, the cherry on top. You know, now the Daves, you know, are going at each other, which was, you know, Ellison, that dude, I mean, I have to think that it was just probably years and years of having to be the guy who had to clean up after him, you know, the guy who had to kind of be the diplomat, the friendly face of the band.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he had to deal with Mustaine, you know, more than anyone else. To his credit, he stood by his side, but also, like, he also is, you know, from what I've, you know, read of him and seen of him in interviews, you know, he's not an idiot. You know, he's definitely seems to be a good businessman, and, you know, he knew his bread was buttered with Mustaine, you know, so he was going to stick it out with them. And that's, to me, that lawsuit, first of all, that lawsuit was huge. He hit him with like a fucking, I don't know if you have the notes or the numbers in front of you, but it was, I seem to remember being like an $18 million lawsuit or something like that for damages and loss of income. And I'm thinking, ain't no fucking way, you know, he's making that much, you know, from Megadeth.
Right.
You know, I have no doubt in my mind that Ellison and Mustaine are millionaires from Megadeth. I don't have any doubt in my mind.
Sure.
You know? At least, you know, Mustaine for sure. I don't know Ellison. I mean, he was out of the band for a little bit, so, but I don't know. But those guys have made a lot of fucking money playing in that
for
band.
Megadeth, yeah, absolutely,
$18 million,
man.
I mean, it was almost poetic in a way. It's like it was, and that's another reason why I believed it, because it was always those two dudes that kept it going. And now these two dudes are trying to cannibalize each other. So it's like everything that was before was no longer. You know, the two dudes that kept it going are now trying to kill each other in court. You know, Mustaine might not be able to play guitar ever again. He's selling all of his old gear, his old Jackson guitars and shit like that. So it's like, I did believe it. It seemed all very real to me. So I was kind of shocked when, you know, like fucking 2 years later, you know, Mustaine came back with the band. So, you know, it was one of those moments where, you know, you're a kid or, you know, a younger person, you kind of feel like an idiot.
Yeah, well, he and Ellison, they settled out of court, and then, you know, obviously Ellison rejoined the band a few years later.
It was a while after that, though.
Yeah, it was like 2010, I think.
It was 6 years, I think, he was out of the band.
Yeah.
So yeah, to answer your question, I did believe it.
You believed it? Yeah, yeah. Have you ever been to a Gigantour?
Only the first one. The first one, trying to remember. I actually missed a lot of it. I know I went with Mike Jeffers, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if we were both working. I'm sure we were both. No, it was fucking summertime, so he wouldn't have been working. He's a teacher. I don't remember why, but we ended up going up there kind of late. And, like, we missed Dream Theater. Oh, no, we did see Dream Theater. Dream Theater played. We did catch them. All we saw was Life of Agony in Dream Theater. You know, we missed Nevermore, because I think they were on it too. We missed Dillinger Escape Plan, because they were on it as well. But, yeah, so we only saw Life of Agony, Dream Theater, and Megadeth. So, yes, that would have been 2005, I think.
Where was it?
Darien Lake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Okay, so earlier today...
Not a very big crowd. Not a very big crowd.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not at all. Well, Megadeth was still kind of, you know, trying to find their feet again, getting back together, and so, and you know, the lineup maybe wasn't that strong. I mean, you know, Life of Agony, you know, they were never huge, but I don't think they've ever been bigger, you know, since than they were in the 90s. You know, in Dream Theater, none of these bands are really like, were arena bands or even like big, you know, amphitheater bands. Like maybe Megadeth was to an extent, but they were still trying to kind of get their footing back. Like Dillinger was still, remember that was like a big shocker, and that was like, I remember thinking that was a huge break for them because they were still really, really underground at that point. I think they were, I don't really remember what album that was. It might have been the Miss Machine era. But, you know, this was not a tour that was stacked up full of huge bands.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And they were either bands that were on their way up, or bands that were on their way down, or bands that were just kind of, you know, as big as they were ever going to be.
Right.
You know? So it was not a very, very big turnout. I mean, it's not like, I'm not saying it was like shitty, like to where there was, you know, only 500 people there. There was maybe a few thousand, but obviously Darien Lake can hold way more than that.
Yeah, of course. Well, now that you described the lineup, that makes a little more sense. Because I didn't really even think about who was who.
There's a few other bands too, but I don't really remember who else there was. You know.
Yeah. Okay, so earlier today we were talking about cryptic writings, and you were saying how you know a decent number of people who actually do dig that record, because I thought we were in the minority for that.
I mean, it's not. I wouldn't say it's really anyone who's older. I would say it's probably people they're probably all around our age, you know, for the most part, except for Jeffers.
Right.
You know, but yeah, most people seem to be kind of around our age or maybe a little bit younger. But I would, you know, I've never really heard that from anyone who was probably, you know, into them, you know, who bought Peace Cells the day it came out, you know.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely a generational record because, you know, obviously we're around the same age, and you know, so that record kind of came out. We were around the same age. They're probably more impressionable, but also, I don't even want to say it was because we were more impressionable, because it's clearly stood the test of time. I think it's probably, you know, it's definitely in their top 5 of records for me. I think it's a great record. And
yeah.
Like I've said this so many times, so many people, it's a great example to me of how if you want to kind of branch out and try some different shit, you know, that's how you do it.
Right.
Because you don't want to, I mean,
do whatever the fuck you want. Whatever. I'm not going to tell anyone how to run their fucking band. But for me, especially if you're at that level to where you're a big band, I think at that point they'd had like 3 or 4 platinum albums in a row. They're a big band. They're a popular band. They kind of weathered the storm of the 90s. Obviously they kind of, waned for a few years. They definitely weren't as big in 1997 as they were in 1992, but they were still, selling 1 million an album, roughly.
Yeah, sure.
So, but if you're going to be in that league and you do have to kind of serve the master of the big record label and you maybe want to try some different shit, great, go for it. But don't forget what got you to the dance.
Right.
Because, you can't, the logic of bands, once they get to these big labels, is just, it's a tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme,
Yeah.
Like, it's just a laundry list of bands making the same mistake over and over and over again over time. They put out strong records, and they sell more and more. And then they get to the big label, and obviously Megadeth had already been on a big label for, probably almost 10 years by the time Cryptic Writings came out. But, you make these records that eventually you start to think of the business end of things, or you start to think of, or you listen to the record label and all that shit, and you're trying to get, it's like you're building a house, and you got the foundation, which is basically your core group of fans that kind of get you to the point where you're selling enough to where the major labels do want you, and then you get to that point. And then it's almost like you decide, all right, if you go in that world where you want to experiment and maybe do some stuff that could be construed as a little more mainstream to try and tackle a wider audience, that's great, and I get that, but it's almost like you decide you want to remove the foundation of the house and then try and build the top half of the house on a hole where the foundation was. Like, you can't do that. It's almost like you're biting off your nose to spite your face. Like,
right.
To me, the goal is supplement and build on top of what you've already had, not eliminate what you've already built and then try and just reroute your trajectory or your path. Like, to me, that just seems like,
because then at that point you're a different band and you're starting over.
Yes, exactly. And you can't, and if your name is Megadeth, it doesn't matter. They would sure find out the record after Cryptic, that it doesn't matter what your sound is, your fucking name is Megadeth. There's only so far you could go with that name. There is a ceiling,
Yep.
And Cryptic Writings was the right way to do it, because there are mainstream rock songs on that record. There are super melodic songs on that record.
Yep.
There's also 2 fast songs. There's 2 fast songs. There's a handful of heavy metal tunes on that record. And it's set up nicely to where you're kind of getting a broad collection of really every one of their strengths at that point. Is it a perfect record? No. But it is a great record? Absolutely.
Yeah, right. It's an eclectic piece. They do cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, absolutely. But then of course, in typical fashion, and this is not just, limited to only Megadeth, but eventually you can go too far in one direction. And that's exactly what they did on the very next record.
Yep.
Yep.
So with a specific track on Cryptic Writings, and this is going to go into picking apart some other songs and some other riffs. Do you think that the song Fight for Freedom deliberately casts shades of Metallica's Whiplash.
Motor Breath?
Well, I was going to say Motor Breath or Whiplash, either or. And go ahead. Well, yeah, it's a two-parter, but go ahead.
Oh, you know what? Get out both parts. No way.
Okay.
Cut you off.
Okay, as a follow-up, can you think of any Megadeth riffs or songs that came out after 1989 that are deliberate jabs at 80s Metallica?
I don't know if I don't know if they were deliberate jabs. I mean, who's to say? I mean, Mustaine is not known for his stability, in some of his decision making. So can I say that he hasn't maybe taken a stylistic stab at them? Who the fuck knows? I don't know. But do I think Fight for Freedom is intentionally motor breathy? I don't know. I mean, really. It's one of those things. It's one of those things where I can't believe that more hasn't been made of that.
Sure.
It's not one of those things where even when that record came out, you would think that people were like, holy shit, this song sounds a lot like Motor Breath, but it was never like a thing, so I'm kind of glad you brought that up because it's really not something that I feel like a lot of people bring up, but that's either here nor there. Do I think it's intentional? I have no idea. I don't think so because eventually it does. The whole song doesn't sound like Motor Breath.
Sure. The chorus is very different.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the chorus is a lot more melodic in rock and roll. And I thought of it today because I had revisited Cryptic Writings today after we talked about it earlier for the first time in years. So I gained a new appreciation for it. But then when listening to the last track, I don't think I realized it before. 20 years ago when I first heard it, I don't think I realized the fucking similarity.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm surprised that it wasn't more of a thing than it is. And again, I think maybe that's because eventually the song does kind of develop its own identity. It doesn't just follow the whole Motor Breath thing. And the solo for Marty Friedman in that song is great. I mean, so there's definitely a lot to grasp onto in that song besides just, this sounds like an older Metallica song. To get to the second part of the question, do I think there's any Megadeth songs after 1989 that took a swipe at Metallica? Nah, I don't think so. Mustaine is such a different kind of writer from Hetfield. Mustaine is, Hetfield's riffs are a lot meatier, a lot heavier than Mustaine's are. Mustaine's are usually a lot more, well, at least when he's at his best, they're a lot more aggressive. They kind of have a little bit more of like a hacking kind of feel to it. Obviously, he's definitely a more technical rhythm player than Hetfield.
Right. Mustaine's riffs move around a lot more.
Yeah, so I don't think, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I mean, in This Was My Life, there's I'm trying to think. Was it that song? Give me a second here. This Was My Life. Yeah, I think that's the, that could kind of sound like, what is that, Phantom Lord, maybe?
Maybe. From Kill 'Em All, yeah.
From Kill 'Em All, yeah. So I think that, you could say that might have, yeah, but Mustaine has a co-write on Kill 'Em All, on Phantom Lord.
So, absolutely.
If I remember correctly. I think he does have a co-write on that song. So, I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I really feel like, one of the great things about Megadeth and Mustaine, really, is that they really don't sound anything like Metallica, like at all. I really think they do sound like very different bands. And you would think that when someone comes out of a band, there would be more of a semblance of that older band style in the new band. And there really isn't. Like, even right off the bat. Listen to Love to Death, off Killing Is My Business. I mean, that's so, off time or whatever that it's almost like irritating.
Yeah.
It sounds
right.
It sounds nothing like anything Metallica has ever done or will ever do.
Yeah, too prog.
So, something.
Yeah.
And,
to something, yeah.
And I just think that, that's one of the things that's great about Megadeth is obviously the music is most important, but I do give Mustaine props for really carving out his own identity, instead of just, coasting on the back of his Metallica reputation, which, let's be honest, that has not hurt him. It at least, no, I won't say it hasn't hurt him, but it definitely probably helped get some extra set of eyeballs on Megadeth when they kind of debuted.
Yep.
Yep. I mean, he did for all intents and purposes have a Metallica song on the first record.
Yeah.
He did do Mechanics, which at that point Kill 'Em All had already been out for 2 years. So he's definitely made it work for him too. He hasn't shied away from it. He's made it work for him. But
sure.
Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of song or riff swiping at Metallica. At least not to anything I would consider like egregious outside of Fight for Freedom.
Okay, so I was gonna bring up the 2016 record. So I've never heard a song off of Dystopia, and I was wondering what your general opinion of that record is, because I haven't heard a single song from it.
It's okay. I would say it's a good record. It's definitely better than the couple they had before that, which were just, not very interesting or really good at all. Actually, one of them, I think the one right before Dystopia, which was, I think it was Super Collider, I don't even own it. And I own every Megadeth record.
Right.
Except for that one. Just because, and the record before it wasn't very good either. But the Super Collider record, I heard the first single when it was about to come out, and I was like, wow, this song isn't very good. and so then I checked out a few more songs when it came out, and there was really, did I check out the whole record? No, but did I listen to 3, 4, 5 songs? Yeah, I did, and they were just like, dude, what the fuck?
Right.
It was just boring, bland metal.
Did it seem like filler?
What was that?
Did it seem like filler? Like filler material instead of well thought out?
To me, you know what it sounded like? It sounded tired.
Yeah.
It and you know what? I feel like you kind of have to maybe not expect it, but when you're at that level and you have contracts and you have obligations, legal obligations to record label or whatever, you have to make inspiration happen, which one thing I've learned, growing up and being in bands and writing songs, and sometimes it's just not there.
Yep.
You can, and if you try and force it, you make it worse, because at that point, if you have like a writer's block or whatever, just nothing's coming out of the well, if you try and force it, then you're grateful for any little thing that comes out, and you probably think it's a lot better than it actually is. And, and when you're a band for as long as Megadeth has been a band, and you're as old as Mustaine is, sometimes you maybe just don't want to have to come up with something. And unfortunately, he doesn't really have that choice.
Right.
If you have a record contract and they need a record by X amount of, X date, and they're going to give you X amount of money to make it, you have to do it.
Yep.
And so you kind of just, you make it happen however you can, and what comes out, comes out. Sometimes you hit, sometimes you miss. But ultimately, I think with these bands that have been around for decades, and, they were broke up for such a short period of time, it almost shouldn't even count. If your breakup lasts, as long or less than like an album cycle, it shouldn't even count. They were broke up for 2 years. I mean, that basically, which was just enough for, an album and a tour. So
Sure.
They really weren't gone for long.
Yep.
And, if you're a band for decades and you just keep doing stuff, I almost think you kind of have to have those shitty records, because it does kind of provide an element of interest in a way. I'm not going to say I enjoy when bands that I've loved forever, put out stinkers or whatever. I'm never thrilled about that, but ultimately, when they have, their big moment, their big return of inspiration, and they uncork a fucking great record, it's great. It's almost like you can't realize what the peaks are until you're looking up at one from the valley.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And if you're a band that's been around long enough, you're gonna have those valleys. But if you're smart enough and you know how to recover, if you find yourself in a valley, hopefully you'll figure out how to get back to a peak again, which, Dystopia was definitely more of a return to form. I would say my biggest bone of contention with Megadeth for probably the last 20 years has been the lyrics.
Yeah.
I used to think Mustaine really was just like a master wordsmith, and he just had a way of putting lyrics together really, 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 really well. Like, he was just top of the line, and Hetfield was kind of the same way for a while too. And really, I just think that, every record, I feel like the last record where he had some really just interesting lyrics was probably Risk, ironically enough. And I just feel like a vast majority of the lyrics he's come up with on every record since has just been really just, they're not all shitty. Some of them are actually really, really good. But I just feel like he just doesn't know how to, I don't know. His best lyrics are when he still had an element of, I have something to be pissed off about. And, when you're 55 or however old he is, and you've sold, 30 million records around the world, and you're a fucking millionaire, what really do you have besides, legal obligation? What's driving you at that point?
It was more...
I don't know.
It was more mechanical, generic, and mediocre than it was inspired and angry like it was in the past.
Yeah, it seems like, but you know what though? It's almost like, I'm not saying that you can't be angry or have some sort of rage or vengeance or whatever in you at an older age. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that, like, it just seems more like when he tries to tap into that well, it just sounds a lot more like, get off my lawn type stuff, like,
Yeah.
So, but I would say the music on Dystopia is there's a couple parts that are actually pretty fucking brutal on it, and obviously Chris Adler played drums on it, and he was really, really good on it. And there's definitely a few songs on there that made it a worthwhile purchase. Absolutely.
Awesome. So this next one is about specific guitar parts, and it's a kind of a polarized question. So, like, what is your favorite clean passage, or not even your favorite, but like, when you think about like a memorable clean guitar part or clean guitar passage for Megadeth, like, what comes to mind first? And then the follow-up would be, what is, in your opinion, the heaviest Megadeth riff ever written?
I would say, as far as their clean guitar parts are concerned, I would say the first one that comes to mind, and this is probably not unique to me, I'm sure it's probably the first one that comes to a lot of people's mind, the little Spanish guitar part Friedman does in Holy Wars.
Yep.
I would say that's probably going to be a lot of people's answer for that. And what's their heaviest riff? I actually think it's on their last record, Dystopia. I don't have, I don't even remember the song title, but it's on their last record, for sure.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not like I don't know, it's not like a mosh part or anything like that. It's just like a really kind of just slow, just brooding, heavy riff. It's actually kind of, atypical, for them. They don't really have a lot of riffs like this kind of riff. It's super chunky. It's probably more of a Hetfield style, just chunk, jun type stuff than it is more of a Mustaine thing, but it's pretty brutal.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, I'll have to check out Dystopia, because, I wasn't expecting that. But no, I'll definitely, I gotta get through it at some point.
Yeah, it's worthwhile pickup for sure.
Right. Okay, do you know anyone that has a physical copy of the Last Rites demo?
No, I don't know. No.
No?
I don't know if it was one of those demos that was, like, traded like the Metallica demo was. But then again, what the fuck do I know? I was 2 when it came out.
Right. Yeah. I was just curious about it, because I saw one.
Yeah.
I saw it once at the flea market in Cheektowaga.
A Last Rites demo?
Yeah, I saw it. I mean, it might have been bootlegged. Yeah. It might have been bootlegged, but I saw it at the Super Flea. I was just thinking about it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I would imagine it's pretty rare. But Megadeth, they were, I don't think they had any demos besides that one, at least as far as I know. And they were, from formation to album, I mean, they were signed fairly quick. I mean, I think they got signed in probably 84.
Yeah, because they
formed late 83, and so they were probably only together a year and a half before that first record came out.
Yeah, they went from Combat to Capitol, and it happened pretty quickly.
Yeah, Combat put out
Killing Is My Business, yeah.
And they recorded Peace Cells while they were under contract to Combat, I believe, and then Capitol Records got interested and then bought out
the contract,
the remainder of the Combat contract, and then ultimately they bought the rights to Peace Cells as well with it. So, but yeah. But I think they formed late '83, and yeah, they were only a band for a year and a half before that first record came out. It seems pretty wild nowadays to think that so much could happen in such a short period of time, but it was a different industry back then. And again, he was in Metallica, who, by 84, they were definitely not really, they were definitely becoming something by 84. They weren't just a secret anymore, so.
Yeah, absolutely. What is... I'm remembering a show that we were at Milky's, and something happened, and you gave me a look, and I knew what was going on. But it inspired this question. What is the most overdone Megadeth cover you've heard?
Probably Symphony of Destruction, I would imagine. I know when I was in Herod, we covered that.
Right.
The problem is, I wouldn't say the problem with Megadeth, but the problem is trying to cover Megadeth, because, a lot of their best songs are very difficult to play.
Sure.
And it's, Symphony of Destruction is a way of playing a cool Megadeth song without having to spend, 3 months trying to develop the chops to be able to play it first.
Yeah.
So I would say the one I've heard the most is probably Symphony of Destruction. But also, if you're, a lot of times those covers serve a purpose of, engaging people in the audience, and, in some instances, I should say, sometimes it's just a matter of playing stuff you like, but, a vast majority of the people that are going to be at a metal show that, I'm playing or you're playing, I would say more than likely they know Symphony of Destruction.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's kind of a flag song.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite Megadeth anything to play on guitar? Any riff, lick, solo, anything like that?
It's tough to say, and it's weird because a lot of, and I think this is one of the things that really kind of behooved me is, becoming a guitarist or, musician is, I remember stuff like Van Halen, stuff like Megadeth, it was all really intimidating to me, because it was so difficult to play that I never really spent a ton of time, trying to learn Megadeth riffs, because I had just assumed, there's fucking no way I'll ever be able to play this. Which is, inadvertently, a good thing, because, I'm not saying I have any trademarks or a style that's identifiable, because I definitely don't. But, if you just learn how to play like someone else, you're just going to sound like someone else.
Right.
And and I guess the thing about that is that, okay, I could just say that I don't just sound like Dave Mustaine. I would say I probably sound like a mix of, 10 different guitarists. Is one better than the other? That's not up to me to decide. That's kind of, it's up to the ear of the beholder. But yeah, I would say the good thing about me being spooked by, off on trying to play certain band stuff is that, their influence is not prevailing. It's there, but it's not dominant.
Yeah. Right.
So, but I can't play some Megadeth riffs. Some of those riffs in Take No Prisoners are just like fucking brutal and fun to play. So, I would say that's some of the riffs in Take No Prisoners are probably some of the more fun ones to play for sure.
Right. That's a good pick. Okay, so hypothetical. In a parallel universe, which would you be more interested in hearing? Metallica, where Dave Mustaine had stayed in the band, or Megadeth, but Dave Mustaine never had a drinking problem in the 80s or ever?
Honestly, I don't know that Metallica
I don't think that they would have been what they became with Mustaine in the band.
Right.
You know, he's a totally... I mean, listen to their sound after all of his influence was gone.
Yep, yep.
They had a totally different sound. You know, and I don't think that with him in it, they would have been as capable of some of the things that... I wouldn't say maybe not as capable, but they would have gone, you know, a different path, for sure.
Yep.
You know, and so I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot of interest in thinking about a Metallica with Mustaine in it longer than he was.
Yep.
And he made a mark. He was, you know, he's got co-writes on a few records. And it's great. I mean, he's definitely a part of their history. He's an important part of their history.
Oh, yeah.
Their early history.
Vital.
But I don't think... I don't know. I would like to think that Mustaine, even without a drug or alcohol dependency issue, you know, I would like to think that he would still have been great.
Be the songwriter that he is, yeah.
I still think he would have been great. I mean, drugs doesn't put that shit in you, you know. Booze doesn't put that shit in you. You have that in you.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
And he, from what I've read, I don't know how accurate it is, but you know, I'm pretty sure that, you know, he wrote Countdown sober for the most part, and that record's great.
Yeah, so, I think you're right. Yep.
You know, sober Dave, you know, is
just as capable.
Shown to be pretty capable as well. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I would be much more interested in hearing an alcoholist Dave Mustaine.
All sober Dave discography. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that would be my answer to that question as well. Okay. So, did you ever get into wrestling?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so, when imagining
I know where this question's going. I don't want to assume, but
okay.
It's going where I think it's going to be. I'm going to grow my ass off.
Okay. When imagining yourself as a professional wrestler, name the first Megadeth song you'd want as your entrance music.
Okay, that's not where I thought we were going to go with it. Okay, good. I mean, it would probably be Symphony of Destruction.
Yeah.
You know, why not?
Right.
It's perfect.
Yeah. What did you think I was going to ask you?
Oh, I thought you were going to bring up how fucking Prussian was Goldberg's theme for like a year or whatever.
Oh, no. I wasn't even going to talk about WCW or whatever.
and Megadeth played on Nitro, and yeah, it was just fucking terrible.
Was it terrible?
No, I mean, well, they played the song fine, but it's not a particularly great song.
Right.
I think I remember reading in Mustaine's autobiography, which, you know, I'm probably sure this is a little bit embellished, but, you know, he claims that when he finished recording the vocals for that song, Crush 'Em, he knew that it was just going to absolutely fucking destroy this band. And he went outside of the studio after he finished, you know, recording it, and he claims he threw up, which, you know, I don't know how true that is, but, you know, if he did think after recording the song, well, this song is going to just destroy us, well, he was very perceptive.
Yep.
That song definitely sucks.
It's interesting to hear you say that about any Megadeth song, but I suppose it's inevitable.
Well, you know, if you love something, you know, I'm a firm believer in extremes and polarity and stuff like that. And I think if you know, can go so far as to love something so much, I feel like that you can go to the total opposite end of that and feel like just a level of just passionate, like, vitriol. You know?
Yep. Oh, yeah, sure.
If
fuck up or something like that. It's no different from, being in a band or, being in like just your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever. It's the same deal. It's the same shit, essentially.
Yep.
And, if you can feel that love that strongly, then you can also feel dislike or hate or disappointment or something negative to the same degree on the other end of things, the other end of the spectrum. And so I'm definitely very much like that with Megadeth. I will, I've definitely been an apologist. I've definitely been a defender, but I've never ever hesitated to just call them out because I love the band so much. I do have.
You want to be honest, right?
Just greatness from them, and I feel like it's almost unacceptable when they or he, fall short of that.
Yep.
Some of those records they put out before Dystopia is fucking abominable.
Oh, wow.
Give me a fucking break, dude. It's garbage. Yeah. I have no qualms saying that I've put out better records than that. And that's not right. He's got like...
Because that's Megadeth, and you've always held them on a pedestal, right?
He's got like a 15-year head start on me playing metal.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I should never, ever, ever be putting out something better than Dave Mustaine. And, whatever. Does it sound arrogant and possibly a little delusional? Absolutely. I can admit that. But I definitely know that at least one of my records is better than
at least one Megadeth record, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I'll admit that to anyone. I'd fucking say it to Dave Mustaine.
Right.
Fucked up. You've done some garbage.
Yep.
But he's bought enough goodwill for me with the great stuff to where I'm willing to withstand some of the bullshit.
Right, and if a Megadeth album comes out, you're going to give it a chance because of the name, and your history.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yep.
Yeah. And again, eventually he always does find a way to kind of pull out of it. He just, I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know if he's just pressed for time with the label or...
So it's worth sticking around. To me, it's worth sticking around at this point just for that alone.
See what he does next,
he does
right?
Recover, and he does find his groove again. The results are generally pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Which is someone at that age is always inspiring and refreshing to see, for sure.
Yeah, man. All right, so we've reached my last question, but I didn't mean for it to go this way, but you kind of answered this in the very beginning, so I'll leave the second part out of it. How strong do you think Megadeth's subconscious appeal is as a revenge band? And I was going to ask you where you fall on that mindset, but you kind of already answered that when you told me your story about 7th grade.
Well, I can kind of touch back on that too, just to kind of, I guess, to bookend it. But so the first question was where do they sit as a revenge band?
Well, how strong do you think Megadeth's subconscious appeal is as a revenge band? I mean, and for that, it'd be for an older generation too, but...
I would never ever profess myself to be, unique in that mindset. I would say that if, I felt that way, and if I was able to identify that element of that band, at a fairly young age, I'm fairly certain that's something that is, within the grasp of others as well. So maybe that's a generational thing, though. I doubt, kids today that are discovering Megadeth, they're going to have as much of a grasp on the whole, Metallica element like we did, because by the time we got into these bands, this, for lack of a better term, feud was only a decade old or less, and it was still would kind of run hot at times, and these guys were all younger. I mean, we're older than these bands were.
Yep.
By the time we got into these bands.
Sure.
So, they were definitely still younger, and they're all full of piss and vinegar and fire, and, there's lots of shit talking, and obviously the press always encourages that because it sells magazines or whatever, but, and they definitely egged it on. But I don't know that the true root of that whole emotion that Mustaine has and really kind of built the whole band on is as defined today for, this generation. Not, at least not compared to our generation. So is it beyond the grasp of kids today? No, definitely not. I would never say that. I would never be so arrogant to say that. But I definitely think it was probably easier to grasp in our generation because it was so prevalent. And, these were big bands. And so there was a lot of press at all times in magazines involving these bands. And no one wants to hear about the good shit about bands because that's not what sells magazines. Controversy and bullshit and shit talking, that's what gets people to buy shit. So I feel like it might have been easier for our generation to identify that element of that band.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
And as far as how it related to me, to kind of touch back on that, I mean, it was definitely something that kind of, it drove me for, probably a lot longer than I would ever care to admit. It's to a degree where it was, kind of embarrassing. Like, I get kicked out of a band when I'm in 7th grade, and there I am at like 21 years old. I was still just like, it's still fuel for the fire in some way,
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's fucking embarrassing. It's like, get the fuck over it, dude. You proved your point, But, it was definitely something that I feel like is, in life, I've, it's probably not.
Do you feel at all like you? Do you feel at all like you wouldn't have become as good as you are had you not been kicked out of that band?
I mean, it's possible. It's definitely possible because you I don't know. It's tough to say. I definitely know that it drove me. It drove me to be better. It drove me insane.
Yeah, sure.
Fucking bonkers. It really, it's not exactly always healthy, but I just, in a situation like that, I especially when it comes to writing music, you give me an inch of spite and I could stretch it for a mile, for sure. I definitely, still to this day, I guess, even, I definitely write better when I feel like when I'm dissatisfied, with something.
Sure.
So, yeah, so I guess maybe that's, I mean, obviously, I'm 38 now. I don't have that teenage angst or rage or whatever the fuck any of it is, but, I feel like that because none of us really ever made it to that tippy top level of success and, or whatever, that it is easier for us to always be able to maybe even tap into that old feeling,
Yeah.
We're playing metal here, we're not playing the fucking Eagles or Fleetwood Mac or some bullshit like that. We're playing metal, and if I can get a little sneer in my lip, I know I'm probably going in the right direction. So, I don't know. I feel like I should be paying you for this. It's almost like that.
Well, hey, I mean, I'm glad that things happened exactly the way they did because you've been in certain bands and you've written certain riffs, and we are a culmination of all of our past experiences. So,
of course. But I mean, I also don't want to fucking over dramatize it or make it seem like it's something a lot deeper than it is. But it's definitely something that pushed me for a very long time. And being able to identify Dave Mustaine and Megadeth ultimately as an element or a vehicle for that same kind of emotion, there's comfort in that as well too, because you say, well, but there's this dude who's actually made it, and he's still upset.
Yeah.
It's. But also, I think that there is something inherently irritating about that as well too.
Well, one thing he said, and you talked about how maybe he calmed down after a few years, and that's why some material got stale, because, he was making millions of dollars, and maybe he felt like things were righting themselves. But one thing he mentioned in Some Kind of Monster was that, he still has to live with the fact that maybe he's number 2, and he still has to live with the fact that he was kicked out of a band that went on to become, like, arguably the biggest metal band of all time. So maybe even as recently as during the recording of Dystopia, he's still angry about that, because he's still got to think of himself as number 2.
I think that just based on everything I've seen from him, there's really not anything that would ever have me believe that's not always going to bother him. I mean, this is someone who's been in therapy of different kinds, probably for the better part of the last 35 years, both for drugs and for whatever, because he had a pretty shitty childhood too, from what I've read, and, so he's probably been in and out of therapy for substance and emotion or whatever, and, I don't see that ever really going away for him, even if it's, because even if he has been successful, because he has. He's, like I said, I think they've sold 30, 40 million albums around the world, which is, that ain't small shit. That's a lot of fucking albums. They play to a lot of people when they play live. They've made a lot of money. They've made careers. They've influenced generations of other bands that have followed in their footsteps. But that will bother him forever. I have no doubt about that.
Yep.
And I just think that him taking his foot off the gas or putting out substandard material or records or whatever, it's not a matter of him not being able to grasp or relate to or access that upset or that aggression or anger anymore. I just think it's a matter of him, having other things going on in life. He's got a daughter who's a country music singer. He runs a management company with his son, I think, and there's only so many hours in the day, and it doesn't really matter how pissed off you are or how angry you are at getting kicked out of a band, X amount of years ago. I mean, you have to take care of your fucking family. There are other things you have to do. It's easier to dwell on how mad you are when you're 26 and you're just sitting around, blowing coke and shooting heroin all day.
Sure.
Because obviously substance problems are fairly well documented, and, I think it was probably easier for him to dwell in that emotion when he didn't really have a lot going for him in life, outside of the band. He's got other things. And, he can be pissed off about Metallica forever. And again, stays the cows come home. I believe he will be pissed off about that forever. But, he's a human, and he's got other things to do. It doesn't matter that he hasn't sold as many records as Metallica. He has sold a lot of fucking records.
He has.
And, eventually you do have to find peace with that. And I believe that in spite all his rage, he's still just a rat in a cage. It was sitting right there, so I had to take it. But
yep.
I do believe that he has accepted, and received comfort in the level of success he's attained, which he should. He's one of the most influential guitarists in the history of the genre. He helped really pioneer a style of music.
He really did. That's a good point. That's a good way to put it.
That much money. He still makes Metallica money. He gets publishing royalties. from 3 Metallica or 2 Metallica records.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? So he's done all of these things that I would hope for his sake he can, in spite of whatever dissatisfaction he has, he can pinpoint saying, you know, this, I really fucked up and I got kicked out of this band. But I hope he can also say, I recovered and I made this life and this career for myself. You know?
Yep. Because, I mean, yeah, that's another, that could be another alternate universe that exists. You know, what if Dave Mustaine had just tucked his tail between his legs and never made music again after he got kicked out of Metallica?
Yeah, and, you know, and some people might have. You know, some people might have done that. Some people might have just been so hurt they just fucking never wanted to play guitar or music ever again. You know, which happens. So no, that is another what if. But luckily, it's not a what if we'll ever have to realize.
Yep.
You know, this guy has created some of the most important music I've ever heard in my entire life. You know,
wow.
I can't imagine, you know, my life without records like Rust in Peace or Peace Cells or, you know, Cryptic or Countdown. Right? I mean, these are records that, you know, I cut my teeth on when I was a kid. You know, they've left a mark on me forever. I could hear these songs without even listening to them. I just close my eyes. I can hear it all in my head, even without just, you know, putting it on.
Yep.
You know, just, you know, I'm glad that alternate reality is nothing but a conversation piece for you and I to fucking talk about, and not actual reality, because he's the shit, and he's a psychopath, and he's a fucking asshole.
Right.
You know, just a egomaniac,
and
presumably.
And all of these things also, together make him incredible.
Yeah, but he also, you know, he does have his moments. You know, he does, you know, I'm sure he's not a terrible person, you know.
Of course not.
He's definitely been a huge influence in my musical existence, you know, hands down. I mean, you know, people call me Gregadeth.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I got into a fight with someone in the parking lot of Club Diablo over Megadeth. And,
I don't think I know that story.
That's a story for another time.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, are we getting to that point?
What's that?
Are we getting to that point?
No, it's just too fucking ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous.
Well, I look forward to that future conversation.
Yeah, it was interesting for sure. For sure. Anyway. Yeah. So yeah, Megadeth. They're sick.
Right on. Yeah, that was a good 90 minutes.
Holy shit, it was.
Yeah, that was an excellent 90 minutes. It flew right by.
Oh, dude, I mean, and this is, I mean, we've only really scratched the surface.
Yeah, it's true.
I could talk, if someone wanted to block off 5 hours of Megadeth talk time, I can make it happen. Absolutely.
Well, did you have anything to add on your side?
No, not really. Not really. I mean, I think we covered a lot. You know, we covered a lot that would definitely indicate my true feelings on the topic at hand, which is obvious. I'm definitely a huge fan. I was in the fan club, you know, when I was, I think in sophomore year of high school, and I'm lucky enough to have actually interacted with Dave Ellefson, you know, in a business level to a degree, because he was an artist rep for Peavey when I was in Sons of Azrael, and Tony and I had an endorsement deal with Peavey, and our contact at that company was Dave Ellefson. He's the one who sent the contracts to my house, which was a totally fucking crazy moment for me.
Dude, that's amazing. I don't think I ever knew that either. Yeah. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking cool. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. So when shall we do this again?
Whenever you fucking want, dude. We got nothing but time.
You have another.
We have nothing but time.
Do you have another? Do you have another topic you want to cover? Do you have a topic you want to cover for next time?
Nah, man. Just kind of hit me with whatever. You know, I don't give a fuck. The less I know about it before I go into it, the better.
Yeah, that sounds good. Right on. All right, well, Mr. Gregadeth, I think I'll let you go for now, and we will do this again very soon.
Awesome, dude. Thanks, Mike. It was awesome.
All right, have a great night, man. Thank you.
You too, man. Talk to you soon. All right, bye.